Hi, I'm Dr. David Dobson. Welcome to Conversations. Today, my guest is Pedram Pourasgari. Pedram is a PhD candidate in management and organization at the Gustavson School of Business, University of Victoria. Today, we will discuss his PhD research, which studies free and open source software as a social movement, examines how it drives institutional change in the software industry. Welcome to the show, Pedram.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Pedram, please share with us what brought your interest to the topic of free and open source software.
When I first started my PhD here at the University of Victoria, I was generally interested in knowing more about communities. Why? Because maybe that term was kind of new for me. Where I grew up in Iran, communities were not that big of a deal. People did not even use a separate word for community, and they referred to similar groups as society or family. But here I was hearing so many interesting conversations about different types of communities: place-based communities, rural communities, indigenous communities. So I thought I'm going to know more about that concept. But like everyone else, I guess I started making connections with my own personal life. And I realized that I knew people who identified themselves as being part of a different type of community, which is called open source software communities. And those communities are a bit different because they do not exist in physical spaces. They exist in online spaces, and they are focused on developing a certain type of software. So I started digging more and deep about these communities, and I shared some stories that I knew about these communities, and my professors and other students were interested in knowing more about that. So uh, when I started looking closer, my next question was, what is exactly this type of community? So I started writing some course papers and conference papers about these communities and what they have accomplished so far.
I'm just curious, your background before you join your PhD program is in software engineering or your or engineering background you brought in?
Yes, I did my undergrad in industrial engineering and my master's in technology management.
All right. That's another reason why you are really interested in this open source software movement. Can you explain what is an open source software community?
Yeah, so every software has a source code, and at the very basic level, an open source software means that that source code is freely available for everyone. So you can use it, modify it, and share it, redistribute your modified versions. But the community around that software is where it gets more interesting. So these are developers, users, activists, hobbyists, sometimes even companies working together on a piece of software that is basically developed openly.
Mm.
And the whole thing is started with the terms free software, introduced in 1983 by a researcher at the MIT AI lab who believed if we don't develop software this way, that the source code is available for everyone, we will end up seeing the software controlling us, not the other way around. It should be us controlling the software. Now it makes more sense with all of these AI developments, I guess, but back then in 1983, that was a new concept. And well, what makes these communities unique is not just the tools, actually, but they shaped or values, like openness, collaboration, and decentralization. And the term open source actually was a different framing of this that emerged later, and it was a more practical framing of the term free software. And they said that if we do develop software this way, we will have more benefits like efficiency, scalability, and innovation. So together, these ideas kind of created a movement that influenced many institutional fields beyond software itself, fields like healthcare, finance, even art and music.
How is the free and open source software movement driving institutional change?
Um, Well, it has challenged some of the major assumptions we used to take for granted. For example, the idea that a big project needs hierarchy, that, for example, secrecy and transparency cannot coexist together, or we need to own something to commercialize it. But open source software showed us a different way. Uh, and it proved that, for example, large scale collaboration can happen without traditional management structures, or transparency and selective secrecy can actually coexist together. And software can also create value for everyone, including its developers, even when it's free to use. And well, these changes had a huge impact, not only on how software is made, but on how organizations think about innovation and collaboration. For example, Microsoft's previous CEO, once referred to Linux as a cancer, and now Microsoft is one of the main contributors to some open source projects.
Mm,
So this movement didn't just disrupt everything, it
mm.
helped us and the companies and institutions rewrite the rules in a way.
Can you give some examples of successful open source software?
Yes, so I guess one of the most successful examples is Linux, actually. So
Mm,
every Android phone is now using Linux,
mm,
and most of the systems that are keeping or the internet running are based on Linux, because the project has so many volunteers, and
mm,
uh, many developers contributed to it in a level that is now actually one of the best operating systems for some purposes.
mm,
And as I said, uh, it wasn't that companies like Microsoft didn't used to look at that software in the same way that they are looking at it right now. And the interesting part about it is that you might think that Linux has become a multi-million multinational company right now, but if you search Linux headquarter on the web, you can see one man standing behind this computer in an almost empty room, and that's the creator of Linux. And yes, so that is one of the most interesting examples. There are lots of
mm,
open source softwares and free softwares that we use on a daily basis without noticing. Like Firefox browser, for example, is
mm,
another.
mm. So, what are some of the challenges open source project face?
Yes, of course. So everything is not perfect in this movement. For example, they are relying on volunteers mostly.
Mm,
So that makes the projects become under-resourced. For
mm,
example, there was a security vulnerability in a case that uh, is called Log4j,
mm,
and it kind of created a lot of problems because that project relied on a small number of volunteers, and
mm,
they cannot actually maintain their project and keep its security on the same level that a massive corporation can do. And another challenge is, of course, funding and sustainability. When you rely on volunteers, when you
mm,
rely on such a diverse and distributed community, uh, you always face problems with funding your resources, because every project, even if it's available for everyone, needs some funding to maintain
mm,
the infrastructure.
mm,
So unlike commercial software, open source software doesn't have such a built-in revenue model. So this
mm,
can make it hard to maintain infrastructure
mm,
to provide some long-term support.
mm,
And also in enterprise settings, adoption of open source software comes with some legal and compliance questions, like how can you navigate using different forms of licenses, and
mm.
uh, figuring out basically who is responsible for that software.
So, Pedram, how does this AI is affecting the open source software development?
Well, I look at it from another perspective that open source software development has the potential to influence AI and the way we
Mm,
look at AI actually. Because you can look at open source software from two different perspectives, ethical one and a practical one. So you can look at it from an ethical perspective and say that, okay, this is the right thing to do. If we don't develop software this way, software will end up controlling us, not us
mm,
controlling the software. So this is probably the right way to develop open source software. I saw in a forum about a week ago that UBC has banned using DeepSeek, and some people were defending it because it's open source. They were like,
mm,
okay, isn't it open source? Can't you just get the source code and run it locally on your own servers? So there are people who believe that if you develop software open source, even if it's developed by another country, an unknown developer, you can still trust it more than you trust people who are next to you and developing a piece of software.
mm,
So this is a one way to look at it, and another way is a practical, perspective that okay, this is if we develop software in an open source way, we can reach our goal more efficiently and sooner. And
mm,
this will enable us to use every resources in every places in the world. So because it's not limited to one company or two companies working on a project, you can actually attract developers from all around the world. So that's how open source can influence it. But
mm,
yes, of course, AI can also influence open source software, the
mm,
way we develop open source software,
mm.
but it's not there yet. I know everybody is talking about, how AI is replacing jobs,
Yeah.
is taking the place for software developers, but in fact, it's not there yet. Like professional software developers, professional hackers spend probably 10% of their time writing codes and 90% debugging those codes. And AI is not capable enough to debug developed software yet.
Yeah.
It might become someday, but it's not there yet.
Pedram, for your PhD, you are studying the social movement of open source software. How are you researching this topic?
Well, I'm I started with doing a historical analysis, like
Mm,
starting from the beginning, how it
mm,
started, how it
mm,
evolves over time. And because I'm studying it as a social movement, after a while I realized that these are not simply communities. They are part of a movement that
mm,
created an enduring change.
mm,
So that movement started with a dream, like every social movement, I guess.
mm,
I started looking at the dream, how it started the whole thing in the first place, and looking at the historical development of the movement. And now I guess I'm getting somewhere that I need to do some case-based research as well,
mm,
and I need to look at, because I'm talking about some tensions that was created between the movement and established institutions. A movement doesn't want to just change something that is changing on its own. It wants to change something that is established, has some
mm,
protectors.
mm,
And so when I'm studying that, they are always facing those tensions with established institutions. So if I can find a case that is about an open source startup, for example, being acquired by another company, I can see those tensions being resolved in real time. So I'm also doing some case-based research on the topic as well.
What do you hope to contribute with your PhD research?
Well, the first, not many researchers are looking at open source software as a social movement, as a
Mm,
social thing, basically. And there are many good technical studies on the topic, but I hope that by looking at this from a social perspective, I will be I can actually frame it in a different way that maybe it starts a new uh, stream of research on this topic. But the probably the interesting part for me is how I can contribute to the social movement research, because well, social movement scholars also look at social movements as something static, that doesn't change itself over time, but I'm
Mm,
studying a social movement that evolved over time, and that evolution enabled it to leave more profound impact on our
mm,
institutions.
mm.
So yes, I'm hoping to contribute to these two different research teams. There are not many scholars who look at this as a social movement. There are less than 10 papers, if I want to be accurate, that looks at the free and open source software as a social movement,
Yeah,
but in management scholarship, of course. Um, but yes, it's an exciting project for me, at
for sure.
least.
So your design, what does it include?
Yes, I'm still in early stages of my research, so
Yeah.
I'm basically observing to see what is happening right
Okay.
now. But yes, what I have in mind and what I'm writing in my proposal is that I'm going to use interviews, and I
Mm,
might end up going I might end up doing a grounded theory research to
yeah.
develop some theories based on
Okay.
the data I collect. But I'm also relying on online data sources, because there are lots of rich data sources online, because
Mm.
these people believe in transparency, so they
Yeah.
share everything transparent. So
Yeah. I'm just curious, the WikiLeaks or a lot of like a wiki related, are they part of like an open source social movement?
um, I I think that they are part of the same ideology. They
Okay.
also believe that everything should be, as I mentioned before,
Transparent.
the that movement doesn't only didn't only influence software industry. It influenced everything, the way we think about privacy and secrecy and transparency. So when something happens to the founder of WikiLeaks, for example, you can see many software developers active in these open source communities uh, talking about that and trying to defend that person. So that
Mm,
means that they are part of the same ideology. But
mm,
if they are contributing to open source software, particularly, maybe not. But from a social perspective, yes, they belong to the same camp, I guess.
mm, mm. Pedram, what have you done so far in your research project?
Well, I spent a lot of time conceptualizing this thing, because, as I explained before, this is a kind of a new way
Yeah.
to look at this phenomenon, and it's a new, probably, way of doing research in both social movement literature and open source software literature. And so I had to spend a lot of time actually trying to conceptualize this thing. I wrote a conceptual paper on this topic, and right now I'm writing my proposal. I have some data sources that I'm talking to basically understand, shape my thinking about how this movement started and evolved over time, and what is happening right now that might be more interesting for me to study.
Mm.
And yes, I'm in early stages, but yeah, I'm getting there, I guess, like many PhD students.
What's next for you, Pedram?
Um, well, I will try to write and finish my dissertation in the best way I can, and I'm doing my best, and I will try to present papers at conferences. I'm also active in organizing events. We're organizing a symposium at the Academy of Management conference, and like everyone else, I guess my dream is to publish a 4-star paper before finishing my PhD. So hopefully I can do that, and I'm aiming for academic jobs. I guess that will help me a lot in securing a position uh, in a good academic institution.
Thank you for your time, Pedram. Best wishes on completing your PhD.
Thank you for having me on your podcast.